Hello everybody, this is TL ROM Hacks, and this video is going to be a beta showcase of a ROM hack for JetForce Gemini that I am working on. You should be able to play the beta, but I'm going to have additional things I will develop over the course of time. The official name I have for this will be JetForce Gemini DS, and DS stands for dual stick. So that biggest feature and idea is that you can play this game with a modern controller. The original game, because it was on the Nintendo 64 and it only has one joystick, was a bit hard to play as a shooter, and some of the original ways that you would control the game were just a little bit clunky. So that was the inspiration I had, as I wanted to make it so that it was more of a Call of Duty style shooter, and I mean that as a compliment because that game honestly did revolutionize how we think about shooters in the modern day. A bit of a call out I'll have before I go into the brief showcase is I tend to develop my ROM hacks using Retroarch and the Mupen core, so I can't verify or guarantee that other emulator setups will work. And then, as I've mentioned, the whole idea of this ROM hack is kind of to use a modern controller. So when you download this and when you patch it, as you're playing, just make sure that in RetroArch, your left stick is mapped to the joystick and the right stick is mapped to the C buttons. A big distinction I want to call out is you might be asking yourself, well, how is this any different, right? Like, the other games had these different types of controls. Couldn't I just map this in RetroArch to work a certain way? And the answer to that question is not quite. Even if you use the control schemes that the game natively supports and you just, map controls in RetroArch, you'll often find that the mechanics of how you move around and how you're shooting are, even with a modern controller, still kind of funky. There's this weird, sense of one stick controls left and right movement and the other stick controls back and forward movement. It just isn't intuitive. So this ROM hack actually represents a fundamental change in making it very simple that the left stick for your joystick should be player movement in all cases, and the right stick should always be your reticle moving on screen. To have a little bit of this of a showcase, I'm going to hit start to pull up this menu here, and there is a way to access this new control scheme. You should have it turned on by default, but just in case you want to check, or if you actually wanted to change it to one of the older control schemes and compare how clunky the old control schemes were, you're welcome to do so. Anytime you open the options menu, whether that's here in the main menu, or if you open the options menu from the single player pause screen, you'll be taken here. And we can go to the controller on the right, hit A to open that menu, and we'll start to see some of the changes that I've developed here. This is actually a multi-page for different types of controls related to this ROM hack. As I mentioned, the default is the dual stick control scheme. Originally, the game only had normal control and expert control. And as I mentioned, even with just playing the original game and using normal or expert, even if you mapped a modern controller to normal or expert controls, it still is just kind of funny and kind of wonky. So I highly recommend, and again, it is a default, but I highly recommend, you use dual stick. And the next thing I'll do is I'll hit right on the right stick, which is technically mapped to C right. You can see that icon in the top right there. And that will take me to the next page. These next two pages are all about aiming sensitivity and inverted aim options for all four players. So with that in mind, this isn't just a new and modern control scheme just for single player mode. This modern control scheme also applies to the single player co-op mode with Floyd, as well as any multiplayer matches that you might want to have. Any of these sensitivity options, you can see that they're defaulted to 5. It's actually a scale of 1 to 10. So I'll allow you to play around and figure out, what value might work for you. But these are all different options that are now accessible And really the only setup you need other than patching the game is just mapping your left stick to the joystick and your right stick to the C buttons, and you'll find that it's a fairly intuitive shooter, I'd like to think. So I'll go back to the main menu and start up the game just so we can kind of see some of these controls in action. A lot of times you can obviously just play around and maybe see what's going on, but I'd like to at least call out, some of the controls that I've changed because they are certainly different than what the vanilla control states were. One thing I'll call out as I just kind of use the left stick to walk around here is there's also a companion project and software that I wrote called the JetForce Gemini Save Editor. You don't have to download or use that to make this project work. I just wanted to call it out because the Save Editor is something that allows you to edit certain values, your save data, if you have certain things unlocked, if you have tribal saved or not. And a lot of people have actually been excited for the tribal aspect too, because rescuing all of them can be a hassle, on top of just unlocking some stuff early or changing the value of how much ammo you have. I've mentioned it, I'm here, I'm running around. The normal game had this, it's called run and gun mode. I'm using the left stick to run, and then the Z trigger, which for me, I've mapped to the left trigger or right trigger. Lets me run around and shoot. In the original game, you could also enter an aiming mode, but the biggest problem with aiming was that you had to hold in an aiming button and then also try and move and shoot, and the controls were not very intuitive. This is just a lot more simplified. All I have to do to enter aiming is just press R. Just tap it, don't even have to hold it, and you'll enter the aiming mode. Left stick is moving me around, and then the right stick is going to move my reticle on screen, as well as turn my character around if the reticle is moving too far or anything like that. And these controls really apply to the different types of environments that you can shoot from. I've added some additional areas where originally in the game it would try and lock you out of aiming mode if your character was like in a crawling position. I've really made it so that as long as you're in control of your character, you can run and gun if you want to, or you can tap R and enter the aim mode, using that right stick to move around. One thing I want to showcase as that is if I'm standing completely still, I can hit B to crouch. And while I'm crouched here, again, can enter or exit our aiming mode. I can hit left or right on the left stick to roll, or I can even hit forward to start the crawling mode. And as I mentioned, originally you couldn't be aiming and shooting and crawling at the same time in the original game. That was a feature I wanted to add to really make it more of a modern feeling type of shooter. The next question you might be asking yourself is, okay, well, how do I change my guns, right? Simply enough, that's just the D-pad left or right. D-pad right will cycle us forward, and then D-pad left will cycle us backwards. I can be running around, I can jump in the air, land, and I'll enter back into that aiming mode. If I'm run, gun, jump, stay in that mode as well. The other controls I want to show are maybe just the jetpack controls. You unlock the jetpack a little bit later in the game, but the controls still apply there. So I'm gonna, A to jump and then A again to be boosting with the jetpack, kind of tapping it to go up and down. One thing you can do with this new control scheme is if I hit B, I will hover and float in place. The only thing that would limit me in normal gameplay here would just be how much fuel I have, but I can still move around while I'm hovered. I can even hit R again to enter the aim mode, and I can, rain death from above as long as I have jetpack fuel to do so. And I think that's honestly pretty much it. Kind of like I mentioned out at the outset, this applies towards any of the controls, whether it's single player, co-op, multiplayer. I would encourage you just to give it a try. It's fairly intuitive to figure it out. Again, I do intend on doing a lot more quality of life improvements. A little sneak preview I'll say on that is I'd really like to make it so that L throws grenades instead of you having to switch to a grenade or throwable type. Haven't implemented that yet in this 0.1.0 version. It's simply just the dual stick controls. If you happen to find any bugs, you're welcome to submit them on GitHub. And that is all. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you in the next video.